Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the NIH Office of Disease Prevention, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to today's event from our Prevention in Focus webinar series. This is our first webinar of 2024, and we are very excited about today's presentation. My name is Valerie Robinson, a health scientist here at ODP, and I will be serving as the host and moderator for this session. For those returning and those joining for the first time, as a background, first launched in 2021, this webinar series was intentionally conceived for the purpose of providing a space to hear directly from prevention research experts and thought leaders whose work is driving impactful advances in the spaces of prevention research and public health. Today, we are thrilled to have Marybeth Bohn and Sandi MacDonald from the International Association for Premenstrual Disorders based in Boston, Massachusetts. They will deliver a presentation on Premenstrual Dysphoric Disorder, also known as PMDD. PMDD affects a notable percentage of menstruating individuals of reproductive age. Its symptoms can significantly impair daily functioning, leading to absenteeism from work or school, strained relationships, and reduced quality of life. Next slide, please. Before we move on to hearing from Dr. Andrea Weitenberg, who will be introducing our speakers, I would like to go over some logistics for today's session. As attendees joined the Zoom today, audio lines were muted. These lines will stay muted throughout the session. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and an archive recording will be posted to ODP's Prevention in Focus website and made available on ODP's YouTube channel in the coming weeks. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And as stated on this slide, please feel free to submit any questions you have to the chat pod and direct them to hosts and panelists. At any point in time, you may use the chat pod for general commentary, questions for the speaker, or to request technical assistance. We have an amazing team of ODP staff who are closely monitoring the chat and working hard to ensure appropriate engagement with our speakers for today. Next slide, please. And with that, I know that everyone is excited to hear today's presentation. We have received an awesome response to this event. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Andrea Weitenberg, who will introduce our speakers for today's webinar. Dr. Weitenberg is a program chief for the Brain Circuitry and Dynamics program in the Division of Translational Research at the National Institute of Mental Health. Dr. Weitenberg also manages a portfolio of NIH-funded research on the topic of PMDD. Prior to joining NIMH, she was an assistant professor at the Maryland Psychiatric Research Center within the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Maryland School of Medicine in Baltimore. Welcome, Dr. Weitenberg. The floor is now yours. And next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Valerie. I really appreciate it. And it is my, great pleasure today to introduce these two wonderful speakers. First, I'll start with Marybeth Bohn. Since losing her daughter, Christina Bohn, to suicide in 2021 as a result of PMDD, she's been an advocate for the condition. The prospect of others suffering like her daughter did for up to 15 years before obtaining a right diagnosis drives Mrs. Bohn to continue speaking out. She speaks publicly about PMDD to raise awareness and shorten the time it takes to receive an appropriate diagnosis. She has lectured at the University of Missouri, Postpartum Support International, the Missouri House of Representatives Committee on Healthcare Reform, Yale's Women's Mental Health Conference, and a variety of other events. In 2023, she campaigned for the Missouri legislature to enact legislation establishing an annual PMDD Awareness Day on October 2nd, Christina's birthday. Ms. Bohn is the vice president of the board of directors for the International Association for Premenstrual Disorders, IAPMD, and has been an active PMDD champion. And our second fantastic speaker is Mrs. Sandi MacDonald. She is the co-founder and executive director of the International Association for Premenstrual Disorders, IAPMD, and an organization she formed based on her own experience with PMDD. This organization is a scientific, evidence-based organization that has served over 1 million people. Ms. MacDonald has over 25 years of experience working in the mental health and addiction fields. She has worked on the front lines in various industries and has taught college-level classes. She has developed and executed programming for a variety of initiatives, including peer support programs used by persons affected by PMDD across the world. As IAPMD's executive director, she has overseen multiple programs for the organization and engaged in numerous research programs. She has co-authored articles in publications like the Journal of International Medical Research, JAMA, and the Journal of Medical Internet Research. She has assisted in managing and authoring a year-long research effort that culminated in the inaugural PMDD roundtable session. This event and initiative produced 2 groundbreaking patient-centered resources, a guide to conducting rigorous patient-centered PMDD research, and a strategic plan to advance patient-centered PMDD research. Thus, it is my incredible pleasure to introduce both Marybeth Bohn and Sandi MacDonald. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for having us. We are very honored to be here. And Marybeth and I actually came into contact about 2.5 years ago when she was struggling to find answers for her daughter, Christina. We have kind of been soul sisters ever since. And she's joined the organization, and we have been just, advocating to move forward for the PMDD movement. So we are very honored to be here, and thank you for allowing us this space. Neither one of us have any disclosures to share. So I'm going to talk for a minute about IAPMD specifically. So IAPMD is a patient-led lifeline, support, evidence-based information and resources for women and assigned female at birth individuals living with premenstrual disorders or PMDs. We have helped over 1 million people from more than 100 countries find answers, community, and hope. In 2013, my co-founder and I embarked on a journey that would change the lives of PMDD patients. We came together with a shared vision to create a safe space for those struggling with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Our goal was to extend a lifeline for patients so that they need not to suffer this in silence the way that we did. We worked to connect hearts and minds across the globe. We worked hard not to just provide empathy, but also to provide evidence-based information and resources to empower patients to seek care. Since 2013, we have helped patients find answers, a community to belong to, and more importantly, hope. As a leading advocate in the PMDD community, IAPMD has been amplifying the voices of those often silenced by stigma and misunderstanding. Together we are stronger. Together we continue to build a future where no one has to suffer in silence alone. Next slide, please. Today, we hope to help you gain an understanding of premenstrual dysphoric disorder and equip you with the knowledge to comprehend and better understand the challenges faced by individuals with premenstrual conditions. We will be personalizing the PMDD experience. Much of this presentation may be emotional as we bring lived experience to the forefront. Please be sure to take care of yourself and reach out for support if you feel that you need it. We will hopefully be sparking light bulb moments as we shed a light on PMDD, offering a deeper understanding of the condition. We hope to inspire you to take action in supporting individuals with PMDD and encourage advocacy efforts aimed at increasing awareness, research, support, and PMDD and other related disorders, premenstrual disorders. Next slide, please. PMDD is suspected to be a cellular disorder. It is believed to involve dysregulation in cellular processes impacting mood and behavior during the menstrual cycle. There is a potential genetic influence. Research indicates that genetics may play a role predisposing individuals to PMDD, although the exact mechanisms remain under investigation. Current understanding suggests that PMDD likely arises from a combination of genetic predisposition and environmental influences, such as stress or hormonal changes. Recognizing PMDD as a legitimate medical condition is crucial for accurate diagnosis and appropriate treatment. We are in a dire need for more research for this disorder. While a definitive cure for PMDD may not be available, symptom management strategies such as medication, therapy, and lifestyle adjustments can significantly improve the quality of life for those affected by premenstrual disorders. Next slide, please. Premenstrual syndrome, or PMS, and premenstrual dysphoric disorder, or PMDD, can cause physical and emotional symptoms, but they differ in terms of severity and duration and impact on daily functioning. Here's a quick breakdown of the key differences. PMS symptoms typically start in the luteal phase, or the second half of the menstrual cycle, and improve from the onset of menstruation. PMS can be uncomfortable and bothersome, but it usually does not significantly impair daily functioning. PMDD symptoms typically start around the time of ovulation, which is about 2 weeks before menstruation, and continue until the onset of menstruation. The symptoms are more prolonged, persistent throughout the whole menstrual cycle. PMDD involves more severe and debilitating symptoms and can significantly impact daily life and relationships. Next slide, please. A bit more about PMDD. So PMDD is a cyclical hormone-based mood disorder with symptoms arising during the premenstrual or luteal phase and the menstrual cycle and subsiding a few days after menstruation. So it is important to note that PMDD is not a hormone imbalance. It is a severe negative reaction in the brain to the natural rise and fall of estrogen and progesterone. Next slide, please. It is estimated that 5.5% of those of reproductive age may have PMDD. That is approximately 1 in 20 assigned female birth individuals. Therefore, if we look at this on a scale just according to the United States, for example, that would work out to be about 4.2 million Americans. Next slide, please. In 2013, PMDD was officially recognized and classified in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders 5th edition, also known as the DSM-5, as a depressive disorder. Prior to this inclusion, PMDD was listed in the appendix of the DSM as a condition acquiring further study, indicating that it is acknowledged but not formally classified as a distinct disorder. In 2019, PMDD was also recognized and included in the International Classification of Diseases 11th Revised Edition, otherwise known as the ICD-11. It was classified as a disease in the genitourinary system and cross-listed as a depressive disorder. This classification in the ICD-11 validated PMDD as a legitimate medical diagnosis on a global scale, providing international recognition and standardization and in its classification. The addition of PMDD to both the DSM-5 and the ICD-11 represents significant milestones in the recognition and validation of PMDD as a distinct medical condition. These classifications helped to establish PMDD as a legitimate psychiatric and medical diagnosis, paving the way for improved awareness, research, and treatment for individuals affected by the condition. Next slide, please. The DSM provides standardized framework for diagnosing PMDD based on specific criteria related to the timing, severity, and nature of symptoms. This classification helps clinicians accurately identify and treat individuals who are experiencing significant distress and impairment due to PMDD. These criteria include the presence of at least 5 out of the 11 core emotional and physical symptoms. Symptoms must occur in the week before menstruation, improve within a few days after the onset of menstruation, and be absent in the week following menstruation. It is important to note just how important tracking your symptoms are. Clinicians usually require the data from at least 2 months of full daily ratings before confirming a diagnosis of PMDD. Next slide, please. PMDD is difficult to diagnose. Unlike some medical conditions that can be diagnosed through blood tests or imaging studies, there is no specific laboratory tests to diagnose PMDD. Diagnosis relies specifically on clinical evaluation and symptom assessment. Next slide, please. Treatment options for PMDD are based on evidence from clinical research, may include a combination of pharmacological and non-pharmacological interventions. Managing PMDD requires a comprehensive and individualized approach that considers each patient's unique characteristics and needs. Evidence-based therapies and tailoring treatment plans accordingly can help healthcare providers effectively help patients manage their symptoms and improve their quality of life. Treatment options currently used for PMDD include oral contraceptives or birth control pills. They can be used to regulate hormonal fluctuations and can also be used to suppress ovulation. Other commonly prescribed medications include SSRIs or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which can help alleviate mood symptoms by raising serotonin levels in the brain. GnRH analogs are another option that can suppress ovarian function and hormone production effectively, inducing a state of menopause temporarily. For some individuals with severe symptoms, a total hysterectomy and oophorectomy, which would be the removal of the uterus, cervix, fallopian tubes, and ovaries, may be considered as a last resort or a last line of treatment to eliminate the hormone fluctuations. Many other therapeutic modalities and wellness programs, as well as lifestyle changes, have proven to be beneficial in helping individuals develop coping strategies and improve their overall well-being. Next slide, please. I'm going to speak for a second a little bit about PME. So premenstrual exacerbation refers to the worsening or exacerbation of existing psychiatric or medical conditions in the premenstrual phase of the menstrual cycle. Symptoms of PME typically worsen in the days leading up to menstruation and improve shortly after menstruation begins. So the symptoms experienced during PME can vary depending on the underlying condition. So for example, an individual that has depression, the onset of their period, they may experience intensified feelings of sadness, hopelessness, so just worse than it would tend to usually be. Next slide, please.
Patients are truly struggling. We would like to share what one patient with PMDD had to say about her experience. Every time it hits like a bus, PMDD is here again, and I sorrow, I ache, I mourn for the life I am losing, for the pain I will cause. For another month, another round, another destroyer coming through to take down all I tried to build these past 2 weeks. And from a partner who wants to support his loved one who is suffering with PMDD. My fiance suffers with PMDD, and it's crushing how debilitating it can be. Sometimes it feels like she needs to put her life on hold for a week or two at a time to deal with the symptoms and the fallout.
In 2018, the IAPMD conducted a global survey on premenstrual disorders, and the findings were astonishing. Next slide, please. These findings showed a clear knowledge gap exists across medical specialties and the ability of providers to deliver quality care to patients. We discovered that receiving a proper diagnosis takes approximately 12 years, which is completely unacceptable. Patients see approximately 6 clinicians due to limited knowledge of proper treatment of the disorder. Many patients have been hospitalized due to a PMDD crisis or have lost their jobs from being so unwell. And over half of these patients that took part in this survey expressed to us that they lost their significant other as a result of this. Next slide, please. These are all very startling. However, the most startling and distressing may be the high number of PMDD patients who experience suicidal ideation. So we discovered that 34% of PMDD patients have attempted suicide, and some of them have succeeded, like Christina, which I'm now going to turn over to Marybeth to tell us about.
It was a delight to raise our 2 daughters, Marissa and Christina. Both were bright, good students, athletic, and talented in so many ways. We were a happy family. We did lots of things together, including sports, vacations, housework, yard work, hosting swim parties, visiting family and friends, and sharing lots of inside jokes that could cause laughter with the mere mention of one of them. Christina was a classically trained vocalist and pianist. She was a National Merit Scholar. She received many full-ride scholarships and spoke at her high school graduation. She chose to attend Brigham Young University, and she was accepted into the BYU College of Nursing. While she was an undergrad, she taught economics labs and she did research for the College of Nursing. She graduated as valedictorian and spoke at her college graduation. She then started her nursing career in Texas, where we were living. My husband and I moved to Missouri in 2011, shortly after Christina had moved back to Texas. We were in Missouri for just a couple of weeks when Christina called to say she had attempted suicide. To us, this was completely out of the blue. We didn't understand what was happening to her. I flew down to Texas to be with her. Dear friends of ours invited her to live with them, which ended up being a tremendous blessing. They were able to talk shop with Christina after work every day since the husband was a doctor. We all thought that she had tremendous anxiety because of starting a new job. And so over the coming months, she was nurtured and given lots of TLC, and then returned to Utah, engaged. She had fallen in love, and she started a job as a thoracic ICU nurse. She ended up putting her husband through 2 years of undergraduate, and then he went on to law school, and they had their 2 babies. What we would later learn is that Christina was able to effectively mask her symptoms. She received great reviews as a thoracic ICU nurse and as a preceptor. She held leadership positions in our church, and she always went the extra mile and was a hard worker. She enjoyed her family and many friends. In late 2018 or in 2019, the mask slowly started slipping off. The symptoms of whatever she was experiencing were becoming worse. Even though we lived 5 hours away, we were becoming more aware of her struggling with depression and anxiety. We knew she had been seeking help for years, but none of the diagnoses seemed to be correct, and the prescriptions and therapies weren't working. On October 2nd, 2020, her birthday, Christina went to the hospital for suicidality. We were thinking perhaps it was the isolation of COVID that was making her more depressed. The next day, she woke up and she told the nurse practitioner in the behavioral health unit, "I feel so much better. I started my period in the night. Can I go home?" Now, you've just learned about PMDD today. Did you just have a light bulb moment? Neither Christina nor the nurse practitioner knew about PMDD, so it was not a consideration. The nurse told Christina she felt she had treatment-resistant depression, and she told Christina she wanted her to undergo her first treatment of electroconvulsive therapy before she left the hospital, and she wanted Christina to continue to have 11 more sessions through the month of October. Christina called me during the month several times to say the ECT wasn't working, and she was very weepy. I begged her not to do it, and I asked if we could do research for her, but Christina was desperate to get well, and she wanted to be compliant. She later would ask if she could come home to recover at our home for 2.5 weeks, and then she would return to her family. When she walked into our home, we didn't know how she arrived. We should have gone to pick her up. Sadly, Christina did not return to her husband and her 2 young children after the 2.5 weeks. Instead, she stayed with us for 1 year and 3 days. Over 100 days cumulatively were spent between 2 behavioral health units here in Missouri. This happened during the COVID pandemic, and we could not visit her in the hospital. We often would drive to St. Mary's in Jefferson City, and we would stand in the parking lot and we would call Christina on the patient line. And then she and a nurse would walk over to the tall windows on the 4th floor, and we would wave to her from the parking lot. We would sign to her that we loved her, and we would stand there and cry. We wondered what was happening to our daughter, and we wondered where did she go. We would have flowers delivered every time she was admitted, and we would address the card to the doctors, to the nurses, the staff, and to our sweet Christina. We wanted her to know she was special, she was loved, and she mattered. We did all we could to protect Christina because of the many suicide attempts we were seeing. We locked off 2 storage rooms, the walk-in attic, the laundry room, the 3rd floor deck. We kept knives and scissors in a locked box in the pantry. We kept all over-the-counter medications and prescription medications in 3 safes. The largest safe was Christina's. Christina was with us all the time. By the time Christina had been with us for 5 months, we moved a twin bed into our bedroom so the 3 of us could be together. Now, Christina was a grown woman, so we asked her if she were okay with this, and she agreed with it. She said she didn't feel like she should be alone. For the first 9 months, we didn't know what Christina really had. It was terrifying to see the many suicide attempts and delusional episodes. It wasn't until we had to return Christina to the hospital on July 16th, 2021 for delusions. And we prayed by our bed while sobbing and asking for divine help because we needed to get her well and return her to her children as a healthy and capable mother. That night, a message came into my mind telling me to look up menstrual psychosis, which was a term I'd never heard before. I Googled it and I read about PMDD all night long. I might as well say I read about Christina all night long. The next morning, with the help of Christina's phone app, I was able to make a grid showing all her hospitalizations due to suicide attempts or delusions that happened hours, a day, 2 days, or up to 3 days before her period started. After years of misdiagnoses, we finally knew what she really had. Christina had PMDD. This photo was taken just 2 months before Christina died. We thought we were seeing the sun shining in the dark tunnel we had been in with Christina for the last 10 months. We just spent the first 9 months wondering, where did our daughter go? I would email that question periodically to her inpatient psychiatrist, and he would always respond, there is always hope, and I clung to his words. This photo shows a hopeful Christina. It was taken a week before we had an appointment in September with a second gynecologist who would prescribe a birth control patch rather than the Lupron her psychiatrist had requested. I explained to the gynecologist that birth control had been a disaster for Christina, and we didn't want to risk her becoming worse. I even told her we had seen 11 suicide attempts in 2020 and 2021. The gynecologist told me not to worry because it was the patch and the hormones had bypassed the liver. She wanted to prove hormonally that Christina had PMDD. She said Christina would be fine, but Christina wasn't fine, and she called for help twice and saw the doctor in between those calls. She was told to keep wearing the patch 24/7. The doctor was willing to do surgery, which was scheduled for November 18th. Sadly, the surgery was denied by Christina's insurance company the day before she died. And it was denied again 3 days later after I'd written a 6-page appeal letter, which included the many suicide attempts and delusions, the grid showing the correlation between the hospitalizations and the start of her periods, and all the prescriptions and therapies Christina had tried over the years. Even if the surgery had been approved on appeal, it would have been too late for our daughter. She was already gone. We were not aware of how suicidal Christina was becoming in the weeks leading up to her death until we saw her last journal entries. On November 3, 2021, we thought we were nearing the finish line. We were hoping the surgery would be approved. We were eager for Christina to start a new life with PMDD behind her. When suddenly Christina went missing and friends and police searched all day for her. We lost our dear daughter to suicide. She left a 6-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son, and a large family who loved her dearly. All of us had been praying for her and pulling for her over the past year especially. And now we were facing the biggest tragedy of our lives. PMDD won. PMDD had proven to be a great liar and thief. It lied to her every single month, telling her she was worthless, a burden, and that she didn't have the savvy to live life. It then stole everything she had dreamed of and worked so hard for. Her marriage, her family, the life she once knew and loved was gone. When we figured out Christina had PMDD, we searched for where to turn, and the International Association for Premenstrual Disorders became a lifeline for us. We knew the organization was trustworthy. We could rely on their information. We joined several of the private Facebook groups. We communicated with Sandi MacDonald and others often. We used their resources, and Christina took printouts to her doctor's appointments. She would ask the 2 gynecologists she saw to please pull up iapmd.org during the appointments so that they could see the treatment options. We shared in Christina's obituary that she suffered from PMDD, and we directed readers to iapmd.org for more information. We learned from many who contacted us that our sharing about PMDD and about the organization turned out to be an answer for their own loved ones. IAPMD created cards for Christina's funeral program and sent us the PDF. We printed 500 informational cards about PMDD for the funeral, and we have since printed 27,000 more cards, and it's almost time to print the next batch of 5,000 cards. I'd like to share with you some of the symptoms we witnessed and what some others who do suffer from PMDD shared with us. I will start in the upper left-hand corner, and I'll kind of work around clockwise. You might notice that someone might be absent from work or school in a cyclical pattern. They might be effectively wearing a mask, but that mask could slip off, perhaps when they're in the restroom or when they get in the car or after they get home from work. They could be highly sensitive. This is rejection sensitivity. And so even a simple conversation that you take for granted, where you might present a different idea or suggest something different, could be taken as highly offensive. This could be the paranoia that somebody is against them. They might have crying spells. They might recall traumatic or cringeworthy memories. I asked Christina if she had any traumas in her life, and she didn't recall any. And she said she had never been assaulted or anything like that, no violence in her life. But when she was in her luteal phase, she would recall 2 cringeworthy memories, and she would cry and cry about them. The first one was about in first grade. She put a paper in the wrong basket. And I would try to reason with her and say, hey, you've had 2 children in first grade. You know that that's not really a big deal. But I didn't realize I was speaking to a PMDD wall. I wasn't really getting through to Christina. The other cringeworthy memory was in 4th grade, a girl made a funny face at her when she gave an answer in math class. She would write the most heart-wrenching journals where she used them as her mental health outlet. She suffered from migraines and aches and pains, and she frequently went to massage therapists and chiropractors. One time she mentioned to me that the doctor thought she had bipolar disorder, which seems like that would be an obvious diagnosis considering the doctor might see her during follicular phase where she's happy, healthy Christina, and then luteal phase where she's sad and weepy. But for Christina, she really didn't have bipolar disorder. It is possible to have the 2 together and then that somebody would have PME. But she did not have bipolar disorder, and she'd frequently call and say the medications weren't working. She tried many medications for various diagnoses, and they weren't working for her. She was frequently suicidal, especially in the last year of her life. Prior to that, she was suicidal a few times, but the last year of her life, it really increased dramatically. Others have reported being homicidal. And if you can imagine, with lacking impulse control, that could be a very dangerous situation. Lacking impulse control can also be manifested in more violence or rage. It could also be manifested in making decisions about things that somebody in their follicular phase would never do. They might be suffering from delusions, and the delusions for Christina really didn't start until that last year of her life. She also suffered from mutism, and that means that she just quit talking. And she didn't want to talk about what she was feeling inside, and she was very, very quiet, almost cat-like. She's just very quiet in our home. She was emotionally and physically distant, and that could be translated into not responding to voicemails, texts, phone calls, emails. And so you wonder why they're so distant from you, and it can be very frustrating. They might be known in your local emergency department because of going for suicidality quite frequently. They might have a lot of anxiety, a lot of looping thoughts, a lot of catastrophizing, a lot of ruminations. The panic attacks can be terrifying for them and for the family. Now, we speak of all of this with a great deal of sensitivity to anybody who is suffering with PMDD, because all of this is so real in the time that they're in their luteal phase. And they are truly suffering. And one thing that can compound all of this are the eye rolls or the jokes about menstrual cycles, which really need to stop. All of us are here on this earth because of the menstrual cycle. And so we really need to respect the reproductive cycles that all of us have and the miracle of life. But here we have something where something has definitely gone wrong in the brain. And so for those who are suffering with PMDD, everything that they're experiencing in that luteal phase is so real to them. Now, they may feel the need to do self-harm, or they may have thoughts of harming others. They may have terrible depression, and Christina's depression would go inward. All the arrows would point inward. For others, it might point outward. And so it could be manifested in another way with rage or family violence, domestic violence. Now, for Christina, she would seem glued to the couch for 1 to 2 weeks every single month. And I quickly assessed that it wouldn't even be appropriate to ask her to help me fold the laundry. She was just so fatigued. Now, when she arrived at our home, she slept too little. She had insomnia, and then it switched over to sleeping too much. She often felt inadequate and incapable. And you can imagine, as a mother who had little children, how badly she felt as a mom, because during those 2 weeks out of the month, she wasn't able to do very much. The idea of making meals or taking care of the laundry, taking care of the home was just overwhelming to her. And yet she still did a good job. She really did. And yet she was so caught up with comparing herself to other people. And that was puzzling to us because we were still trying to think about our healthy Christina and how much we admired her and wanted to be more like her in so many ways. Now, somebody with PMDD might have outbursts, and that wouldn't be true to their personality. They're normally pleasant. And so you can imagine how embarrassed and ashamed they might feel afterward. This is where that aftermath happens, where they're having to clean up later on. They might suffer from terrible brain fog, and they can't concentrate. They can't get work done, can't meet deadlines. Now, they might want to abruptly end relationships. They might ask for divorces or breakups. They might quit jobs in their luteal phases, jobs that they really need. And this is where employers need to try to have some understanding and perhaps have intermittent FMLA or give them opportunities to work from home or in a private office, do some things, because we know that they were hired for their talents and skills. But right now they're really suffering. And we have to remember that we would be supporting somebody with cardiac disease or kidney disease or with cancer. And people with PMDD need some understanding and some help and some support in their working relationships. Somebody with PMDD might also make hateful comments that they don't really mean. And yet then after their periods start, they're trying to clean all this up and try to repair the relationships that they feel like they've damaged. Now, during pregnancy, they could have one of two kinds. Christina in her first pregnancy had the kind where she felt fabulous. They might say, I've never felt better in my life than when I was pregnant. And that was true for Christina. She said she was clear-minded. She didn't have any depression or anxiety. But then in her second pregnancy, she had prenatal and postpartum depression. And we know that there is a link between postpartum depression and PMDD. PMDD can strike at any age during the reproductive years. It is a spectrum disorder, and it can become worse the longer it is undiagnosed and untreated. But sadly, there are already youth who are in behavioral health units because of suicidality and delusions. Now, it is important that a patient receive careful monitoring, and we didn't know that when Christina saw the gynecologist. When she received that treatment, we should have asked, what is monitoring going to look like? Another thing I would say is that when a patient calls and they're in distress and they call a doctor's office and get patched through to a nurse's line, and then they get the voicemail where it says, I'll return the call in 24 to 72 hours, that might be too long of a wait for somebody with PMDD. They are truly in need when they call. Now, that morning when I called Christina on July 17th, 2021, after I'd been reading about PMDD all night and figured out that's what she had, I asked Christina what would have helped her over the years so that she could have been diagnosed much earlier. And she said if someone had known about PMDD in the emergency room and had asked her 3 questions, it would have helped them get down to the bottom of it much sooner. And we asked that these questions be known as Christina's questions, so everyone will remember that a young mother died who didn't need to die. So Christina's questions are, when was your last period? When are you expecting your next period? And what is PMS like for you? Somebody in distress might be able to recall their last period if it's in relation to, say, a state fair or a play that they went to, and they can look on the calendar and start counting forward. Also, some people might have more dangerous symptoms around ovulation, and you could count forward to see if they're ovulating or closer to starting their menstruation. To when are you expecting the next period? Christina would have been able to look at her phone app and say, oh, my period's going to start probably in a few hours or tomorrow. And then 3, what is PMS like for you? And she said, use the term PMS because I don't know what PMDD is. And I would have said my PMS is lasting 2 weeks. And that would have opened the door for a doctor or a nurse to give her prompts about other things. Because Christina wouldn't have realized that all the symptoms she was experiencing belonged in the PMDD basket. Now, 2 years later, in July 2023, the American Psychological Association determined that the menstrual cycle ought to be treated as the 5th vital sign. And IAPMD worked with the APA to develop questions for patients. And so those questions are, do you menstruate? Does your menstrual cycle affect your emotional health? Have you been diagnosed with any other emotional or behavioral disorder? And have you tried any PMDD treatments before? And here, this opens a door to explain about what PMDD is. But see, we can reduce the time of diagnosis from from the average of 12 years to down to a matter of just a few months if the right questions are asked from the onset.
So in 2021, IAPMD created 2 landmark resources as a part of a project funded by the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, or PCORI. We dove into what we currently know about PMDD, exploring past and present research and exploring the future to see how we can fill the gaps in our understanding of treatment of PMDD. Together with the coalition that we built of clinicians and patients, we worked on ways to expand our knowledge and approaches to help those affected by PMDD. You can take a deeper dive into those as they are available on the IAPMD website. Next slide, please. Last December, the Association for Obstetrics and Gynecology released clinical practice guidelines for the management of premenstrual disorders. IAPMD's work helped inform these guidelines and was included in a resource for patients and families. Next slide, please.
We are grateful that IAPMD partnered with us as we were striving to get the nation's first PMDD Awareness Day in Missouri. We're grateful that our state legislators chose Christina's birthday, October 2nd, as PMDD Awareness Day in our state. IAPMD leader Sheila Buchert, who is the board president, and Sandi MacDonald, the executive director and co-founder, wrote letters of support to help us. And we're hoping to see this happen in many more states. IAPMD created the annual PMD, which is Premenstrual Disorders Awareness Month. That has taken off globally, and other PMDD organizations have also honored April as the PMD Awareness Month. IAPMD builds evidence through grants, position papers. I am so proud of IAPMD that they are often asked to offer position statements. They build influence through their Awareness Month, influencer meetings, and their great advocacy work. And they build empowerment through peer support, education, and training, website resources. And Sandi's about to announce the coming ebook. In social media, we see more and more conversations about PMDD. Patients have become experts. IAPMD has provided so many resources, including the private message boards and online support groups, and all the resources online so that the patients are truly educated. And they're doing more and more to bring medical professionals along to join the conversation as well.
And we are super excited to announce that IAPMD is releasing the first ever comprehensive evidence-based ebook on PMDD. It will be available through our website on April the 17th. Next slide. So the McKinsey Global Report identifies premenstrual disorders as significant factors affecting women's health. It emphasizes how health education, particularly menstrual education, is a powerful tool for empowering women to understand and manage their own bodies. By providing comprehensive health education, women can gain insights into menstrual health and effectively learn strategies to address premenstrual disorders. Next slide. The report suggests that the economic impact of premenstrual disorders could represent a significant portion of the overall economic burden faced by women, sorry. In fact, it indicates that these conditions may contribute to more than 50% of the economic impact, highlighted their substantial societal and economic implications. This is a significant strain on experienced by women, encompassing healthcare expenses, diminished productivity in the workplace, and a decreased quality of life. Next slide. And we are thrilled to see the recent announcement of the new White House initiative to advance women's health research. More research is definitely needed. We would like for you to check out IAPMD's website, for there's a wealth of information, resources, and support available there as well. IAPMD also has a professional community made up of clinicians with a keen interest in premenstrual disorders. We have researchers there, we have students, we have a very wide array of individuals, anybody that really has an interest in PMDD. So definitely, if you fit into the category of that community, feel free to take a look at the website, and you can definitely join that community. And if you want to take a moment, this QR code will bring you directly to the website.
Thank you for inviting us to speak today.
Thank you
It's
for your
been
time.
important to us to share Christina's story and to share about IAPMD.
Thank
you very
you,
much.
Marybeth and Sandi, for your wonderful, informative presentation. Thank you for sharing Christina's story, Marybeth, and please accept our heartfelt condolences.
Thank you.
As you may imagine, there are lots of questions and comments in the chat, and even condolences. And as a reminder to our attendees, please continue to submit your questions in the Q&A pod directed to all panelists. And as we continue to think about your questions, I'd like for you to take the time. Next slide, please, Marybeth. I'd like for you to take the time to save the date for another webinar presentation coming your way on June 3rd. The topic will be on intimate partner violence and abuse screening in pregnant and postpartum women. And again, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on ODP's Prevention and Focus website and also ODP's YouTube channel. Next slide, please. Okay, we will now move on to the question and answer portion of today's session, which will be led by Dr. Weitenberg.
Hi, everyone. And again, Sandi and Marybeth, thank you so much for a fantastic talk. I just starting out with the questions. One is, would a diagnosis happen with an OB/GYN or a mental health professional?
I think it really depends on where they are located. So in the United States, for example, more people seem to be diagnosed when they seek psychiatric care, mainly probably because of the DSM-5. So, but that's not to say that that's just the only way that they receive a diagnosis, because we do have other, like many patients that come to us that are diagnosed through an OB/GYN. So sometimes they also like to work together if a patient is lucky enough to be able to receive that care. So they are both definitely equipped to be able to make a diagnosis.
Fantastic. The next question is there a correlation with PMDD and other reproductive disorders such as endometriosis or PCOS?
There is not a lot of direct studies, because as we've stated throughout the presentation, PMDD has been very understudied. So we don't have a lot of specific studies to show the correlation between any of those. That is something that we obviously want and aspire to do, and hopefully we will get there someday. But the studies are very limited, if any. So again, that, you know, I wish I could have a better answer for that, but we really don't have a better answer for that at this time.
Gotcha. Okay, there's a couple questions that have been answered by other attendees, but I'll highlight them briefly. Does PMDD affect the length of your period or how heavy your flow is?
Oh, that is a good question. I don't know if I could generally answer that. I could answer for, personally for myself, I did have multiple things happening. So I did bleed heavier. I don't know if we necessarily have, significant evidence as to an answer for that either. Unfortunately, again, like we said, it's such a limited amount of studies out there, and we hope to keep pushing that needle forward to get more studies. But definitely with heavy bleeding, sometimes something like birth control maybe would be something that could settle down the bleeding, but again, it depends on each individual patient. So that would be a good question for someone's doctor as well to see. And obviously, if they do have concerns about that, they should seek that attention from their medical doctor so they can get a a more distinct answer.
Another question is, does menopause resolve any of these symptoms? And I think by these, it means like the PMDD.
Yeah. So a lot of patients come back to us and say that natural menopause has definitely helped. They're not experiencing the monthly fluctuations because they're no longer bleeding. So yes, natural menopause for sure. And then again, surgical menopause, kind of the same thing. The fluctuations are not there that were there before. So it definitely does help with alleviate all of those symptoms.
Another question is, someone was wondering what evidence may exist around women using psychedelics to cope with PMDD. This particular person says they're doing micro and macro dosing studies.
It's very interesting, and it's something that there's just not a lot of studies. There's only one study that I know right now that is being conducted in the UK, and we don't have a lot of information on that because that study has not been completed. But we can't really speak to whether it is helpful or not helpful. We just know that again, it's very understudied, and like I said, there's only one study right now that I even know of that's being done. So another work in progress, and certainly an area that would like to be examined. There's tons of things that we want to study and would love to study, and we hope to get there. But like we say, we definitely need more research and have to keep looking into all of these things.
How often does a PMDD diagnosis not coincide with major depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder?
How often? I am not sure. I think technically it would probably depend on each individual, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
This is a great question coming. How do you help a loved one suffering from PMDD, not diagnosed yet? Could someone share where and how to get the loved one help? And which I think that you guys said.
Yes, absolutely. And my heart goes out to that individual because I fully appreciate both sides to that. I appreciate patients and parents because I can't imagine how difficult it must be to watch your loved one going through something like that. And I know on the other end, being a patient myself and how I was and how I went through things, there's definitely support out there. We do have lots of resources on the website. We do have a support group for partners and parents. We have Facebook group. There is support available. We have other resources that are available. You are welcome to contact support@iapmd.org, and we can pass that information along, and you can talk to a peer support provider that can help you come up with some solutions or ideas and ways to try to help yourself and the individual that you care for. So by all means, contact support, and we can certainly help with that and help navigate through the website of where some of the resources are and put you in touch with peer support providers that offer the groups that they could attend.
Oh, someone wanted you to bring back the QR code. Is there a way to
Mark the code, Marybeth?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we are almost at the top of the hour. These were all excellent questions coming in, and I see there are several remaining questions still in the chat, and we'll look into getting some of them answered by the presenters to possibly be shared with the recording and slide deck once available. I want to thank you again to our awesome presenters, Marybeth Bohn, Sandi MacDonald, for elevating this very important topic of PMDD and pathways to start to address this. Thank you again, Dr. Whitenberg, for the wonderful introductions and in leading the Q&A discussions. Thank you to my ODP colleagues, Catherine, Melissa, Teresa, Winnie, and James, who all worked together behind the scenes to make this webinar possible and run smoothly. It truly took a village. And an additional thanks to all of you for making time to join us today, for all of your thoughtful questions, comments, and resources shared. And if you have any questions about the webinar series or today's presentation, please contact us via email at preventioninfocus@nih.gov. Thank you again for attending, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.